uh, just for some setting, some of you may not be familiar with Bottom Line, so I just want to give some context to who we are. Bottom Line partners with degree aspiring students from first generation and low income backgrounds to help them get into college, as you see, graduate and go far. We operate three major programs. One is College Access, that is working with high school seniors in the whole planning and getting into college. So from essays to college lists to dealing with financial aid to then making the affordable choice to choose which college they will attend, to then getting into our college success program, which is directly from Access Success, but also we take students directly into our program who are in our target colleges. And in our success program, same thing, helping them through their trajectory of attaining that degree, helping them with employability skills, affordability issues, and also some life circumstances, because we understand how difficult it can be to get that college degree and even get it within 4 years. And the last major program of Bottom Line really is our Career Connections, the Go Far compartment that is sort of fed into all aspects from access to success, really looking at how we engage students in their employability skills, what they can do in that moment in their life to begin to prepare for a career, for work readiness, whether it's resume writing, interview skills, internships, thinking about study abroad, preparing for grad school, all the things that will directly connect them to land that great first destination job once they graduate that gets them set up for their career. So that's a little bit about Bottom Line. But before I introduce the panelists, I do just want to do a little bit of context setting. And I wanted to begin with a quick quote. So, until we get equality in education, we won't have an equal society. And this is from Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And it was important to sort of lead with this ground setting just on the heels of the Supreme Court decision around affirmative action and the challenges that now places on doing even more to get our young people in general, but also to get our young Black and Latinx men the access and the support that they need to get through college. One of the things that the data would say is imperative that Black men and Latinx men are not accessing the critical one-on-one guidance. They don't necessarily have that support person. They don't necessarily have that person that's looking out for them. They don't have that direct connect into the college pipeline, which makes our college access programs so uniquely positioned to sort of really engage them in a way that has not happened fundamentally over the years. Personally, for me, you know, I speak for this as personal alignment. I am a Black man who is first gen, grew up in a low income and single parent family. I had the wonderful opportunity to be part of Prep for Prep. I know there may be people in the audience who are connected to a Prep for Prep, an Oliver Scholar, an ABC. But I know for me, through that one opportunity, I was able to change the trajectory of my life. I ended up attending the collegiate school for boys on the Upper West Side, to then attend the University of Pennsylvania. So I definitely understand the importance and impact of an organization that is deliberate and intentional in working with students to help them attain these dreams. I'm definitely proud that Bottom Line, and I know we have Eagle Academy, and we'll talk more about that later, but that Bottom Line and Eagle Academy as examples are using their platform and voices to sort of lead this charge. So I know we have some data on the screen, and you know, for far too long, young men of color have just been underserved and underrepresented in higher education. Just as you can see from the graph, the proportion of men enrolling in higher education has been lower than women generally, and this is data from 2020. We can actually go to the next slide. Black and Latinx men have lower educational attainment than women, and you can see the stark contrast in numbers. I'll just give people a moment just to take a glance at it, as it sort of sets us in sort of why this work is important and critical. We can go to the next slide. So just some things by the numbers. Enrollment in higher education overall, fell 2.5% in the fall 21 for Black and Latinx young men. The decline among men was more than 7 times as steep as decline among women. College enrollment for Black men decreased by more than 14% and by more than 10% for Latinx males between the spring of 2020 and 2021 semesters. And the 6-year college completion rate for Black men is 38%. Next slide. So one of the things that I want to set up is for us to talk a little bit about the recruitment at Bottom Line and sort of why this has been a central priority for us. We're definitely engaged in increasing the numbers of Black and Latinx men that we serve. We definitely want to be in proportion with the amount that are served in our New York City Department of Education. So we have some work to do, but I'm happy to say that we are along the way. I'm privileged to introduce my colleague, Shane Joseph, who is Bottom Line's Recruitment and Partnership Program Manager. He's come from us from Breakthrough New York and Achievement First. Shane, this is his actually, I guess, 1-year anniversary working with us. So congratulations on that, Shane. So without further ado, Shane, it'd be great for you just to share sort of about the recruitment at Bottom Line.
Thank you for the lovely introduction and the congratulations. As Michael mentioned, my name is Shane Joseph, and I'm the Student Recruitment and Partnerships Manager at Bottom Line. I oversee recruitment, and I probably will be in conversations or have been with some of you in the room. And so, as Michael mentioned, Black and Latinx young men have historically been underrepresented and underserved within the college space. And so while Bottom Line is here to do the work of that one-on-one advising to help you get in, help those students get in and through college, historically, they've also been underrepresented in Bottom Line's cohorts. And so we see that as a shortcoming with respect to our core value of educational equity. And so in 2021, with the support of the Robin Hood Foundation, we consulted with the consulting firm Change Impact to analyze these trends and how we can change them. Our analysis was completed in the spring of 2022. And so Change Impact provided a set of recommendations and strategies to help us implement into our recruitment strategies to help us engage more of our men of color. Some of those recommendations are on the screen, but in short, I can summarize them into 3. Simplifying our application process, creating incentives for applying, and then enhancing partnerships with our high schools where there's a higher population of our Black and Latinx young men. And so that's what we were given. I'm going to spend more time talking about how we actually implemented these new strategies for recruitment. And so the first thing that we did is actually hire a professional graphics designer to overhaul our recruitment collateral. And so you see an example on the left of our materials both translated into Spanish, but then you also see that our students are more reflected, the demographic of our students are more reflected in the marketing materials as well. Part of that process, we actually consulted our students to say, this is what we have as our first round draft. This is what we have as our previous. What do you think? What are your recommendations? And of those recommendations, we came up with these designs. Beyond that, we're being very explicit about what our application process looks like. In short, there are 2 steps to our application process. Students apply online. It's a quick 5 to 7 minute application. But then afterwards, we have to submit eligibility documents, which require a couple of different steps. And so we're being very clear around what those eligibility requirements are, what the full application process looks like, and then more importantly, we actually simplify or streamlined our application process rather, so that it's more clear and more easily accessible for our students to use. Third is creating partnerships with both our high schools and community-based organizations so that we can create a pipeline of students that we know are going to benefit from Bottom Line services the most. Those places include, some of these places actually might be in the room, so shout out to you if you're here. Center for Family Life, International High School at Prospect Heights, City Lights, as I know is in the room, Kings County's Hendersley, and then of course the Eagle Academy Foundation. And so ultimately, all these methods are meant to make joining Bottom Line more accessible for all of our students, but specifically supporting our Black and Latinx young men. And so we're happy to say that the percentage of our 2022 cohorts who identified as Black or Latinx and male was almost twice as high as the year 2021. And so we're really excited to continue to build on this throughout not only this continuing recruitment year, but the next. And so we're happy to continue this momentum. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you all can support and get engaged with the work as well. Thank you. I'm going to hand it back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Shane, for the overview. Definitely helpful to have the context so that we can see sort of bottom line as an example of sort of where we came from, where we're headed, the things that we're trying to highlight as we try to identify and recruit and retain Black and Latinx young men in our programs. I want to take a second to introduce our panelists for further this discussion. Will be added to sort of the conversation with Shane. And remember, we will definitely have time to answer questions. I know that there's some good dialoguing happening in the chat, so still feel free to throw questions in there that we will try to answer as many as possible when we get towards the end. First off, we have Jonathan Ramirez, who is our Principal Success Advisor in the New York area. Jonathan has been with Bottom Line for 7 years, so he's definitely not a lifer yet, since we've been around for 11 years, but he's longer than most. So definitely thank you for that. And Jonathan has been working with hundreds of our students, helping them graduate through his advising. He's incredible. We love him, but more importantly, from the students' mouth, they love him. And it's special to hear that. And then it is our special privilege to introduce our guest panelist, Donald Ruff. I am going to read Donald just so that I don't want to miss these important words. Donald Ruff is president and CEO of the Eagle Academy Foundation. In 2022, Mr. Ruff was selected by Crain's New York Business in their esteemed notable Black leaders and executives list, a recognition for, and I quote, talented and accomplished Black individuals whose professional and communal achievements enhance New York City and the lives of its inhabitants. Donald Ruff is charismatic visionary. I know he works tirelessly on behalf of young people. This is directly aligned to his dreams and his goals. This is a brother that lives and breathes this work, and we're honored to have him here to be in this dialogue and offer the wisdom and the expertise that he has. So first of all, thank you, Donald, for being here with us. And start with just a question of just for those who may not know, just what does the Eagle Academy Foundation do, and sort of talk about the population that you serve.
All right. First and foremost, thank you. And thank Victoria for having me here today. It's truly a pleasure and an honor. As you guys know, I believe in the community, right, of CBOs and building ecosystems. So the Eagle Academy Foundation, we're predominantly known for our work across our network of all-male public schools. While the first Eagle Academy was founded by the 100 Black men of New York in response to the educational crisis at the time, back when in 2013, where the graduation rate from high school for young men of color was at 32%. The very next year, the Eagle Academy Foundation was established to lead the replication effort. So the foundation was initially the starter of schools. And since then, we have evolved to not just support our network of schools, but really focus on improving the education and life outcomes for young men of color across the city and across this country. And we do that in 2 ways: through our Eagle Institute, which is our trainer, working with school districts, school systems, and schools to move the needle with their Black and brown male population in their respective schools. We helped to actually launch the first all-male public school with the LA Unified School District, and we're currently working with Buffalo Public Schools to do the same. And with Eagle Soar and Beyond, that work has actually come out of research with our alumni population and getting a sense of what life has been like post-Eagle for them. And everything that came back from navigating microaggressions, the challenges of finding entry-level employment, early career employment, internships, lack of professional mentoring, not being financially literate. Out of that, we took a deeper dive with focus groups, research, and now we focused on not just college access and success, but how we're embedding workforce readiness, also looking at financial literacy and economic empowerment, but also with SEL, social emotional learning, as a through line in all of those bucketed areas. So that's kind of like who we are. But ultimately, we're looking to become a clearinghouse for the preparation, activation, success of young men of color, right? And position them to break generational cycles of poverty.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Donald. And bottom line, at Eagle Academy have been collaborating since 2014, and we've probably collaborated around maybe 40 or so students over that time. So we're definitely glad to work in support of these students in New York City. I just want to go back to Shane, with your role being recruitment and partnerships. Can you just talk about why, for us, partnerships opportunities are important, and where you see there might be more need?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of already mentioned it, and this is a great example of what I'm going to speak of, which is relationships. When we're working with students that are either enrolling in college or already attending college, we're working with them at a very critical point in their life. And realistically, when I'm recruiting them, they're 11th and 12th graders. And I'm speaking to them for probably about 30 to 45 minutes in recruitment. And honestly, although it's a great conversation, I very much share what my experience has been like as a Black male who went to the City College of New York at CUNY school. And I make that connection, but then I'm gone. And so realistically, it takes a lot of word of mouth, and those relationships are something that we need to lean on before we have that handoff. Counselors, staff members, families are the ones that really are able to spread the word of mouth and create that relationship and speak of bottom line and really speak to the impact that we have on both their trajectory of going to college and then being successful all the way throughout. And so working with places, foundations such as the Eagle Academy Foundation allows us to have those pipelines of students that we know are going to benefit from bottom line services. And we're making sure that it's of the demographics that are going to be served the most. Ultimately, there's a lot of alignment in terms of Eagle Academy Foundation and bottom line in terms of wanting to increase the number of young Black men of color who are getting our services. And so this is an example of that alignment.
Great. Thank you, Shane, for bringing together sort of like how we are looking at relationships, pipelines, and alignment. Don, I know that we are working sort of towards some of the same goals, and I didn't know if you could just take some time to maybe share more on how maybe the focus of Eagle Academy sort of intersects with a bottom line and sort of in the space where you think that we can continue this work together.
No, absolutely. In the previous conversation we've had, I believe organizations like Bottom Line are necessary. Prior to coming to Eagle, I spent 7 years at SEO, Seizing Every Opportunity, and was the chief architect for their scholars program. And at the time, I remember Aish was leading the work and just trying to figuring out this college persistence space. And when I look at the landscape of community-based organization in New York City, a lot of them are predominantly focused on access, right? But not necessarily the success part of it on the other side, what leads to retention and persistence. So when we talk about a collaboration of the Eagle Academy Foundation and Bottom Line, it's really an extension of services, right? It's about helping young people complete the mission of college completion. So many organizations don't necessarily have the bandwidth, right, to, like, for example, SEO right now has probably 30 people, right, chasing down the college success space, right? When you look at organizations like DC College Access, it's actually part of what the government has pushed forth in terms of getting that level of support for students. So when you talk about a bottom line, when young people are making this transition, right, that is fully loaded, as you mentioned you being a prep for prep student, I'm an alum of the Oliver program, right? And, we both come from the early stages of those programs, right? There was no diagnosis for stereotype threat, microaggressions, survivor's guilt, or imposter syndrome. We were just going through it, right? So to have a caring guide to help young people navigate this new space, diversity is about representation, inclusion about the actions that we take, but belonging is a feeling. And so to have people that could help to assist with that belonging and having clusters of students to really take that journey with, where there's a level of shared experiences, right? When there's enough of you on a predominantly white campus, belonging is there, right? It makes things feel a little more familiar, if you will. But these type of relationships, I believe, are essential for community-based organizations, but for high schools in general. High schools don't have the bandwidth. They love their young people, but they don't have the bandwidth to see them to completion and see them through those next steps. But that's why I've always been committed to kind of figuring out how do we really just nail this, right? And create a definitive pipeline between our two organizations. Like this type of partnership is essential. It's not a nice to have.
Great, great. Thank you for that, Donald. I wouldn't agree with you more. I remember those days, man. It almost like the guinea pigs are trying to figure out like how you going to make it through, and it's a blessing to take sort of the wisdom and to learn lessons to figure out that we can pay it forward, to figure out how we make it a little less complicated. And we haven't even talked about language barriers and cultural fit and so on and so forth. So definitely thank you for sharing that. But having said that, Shane, I'm interested if you could share what you think might be some of the barriers, right? So like we want to get them in the program, but what do you think are some barriers to entry for programs, college access programs like Bottom Line? What's stopping them from joining us?
Yeah. When I consider that question, I think that our counselors and CBO representatives are our greatest allies. As I mentioned, they're really the ones that are able to give voice to what our program does and just champion it and really get them through that door before that like relationship becomes a handoff or more of a relationship with advisors included. But they can also be our barriers as well. There can be biases around what an ideal college going student looks like. And so a lot of the times my conversation with those counselors are around speaking to the entire audience and just giving them the opportunity. Whether a student chooses to be a part of Bottom Line or not, I'd rather speak to the entire cohort of, let's say, 90 students, as opposed to the top 10% of students that have 90 plus GPAs, scored really high on the SAT scores, and are taking the AP classes. Those are a population of students that we do want to speak to, but we also want to look at the students and work with the students that have a 75 plus GPA, but have a really compelling college essay. The ones that actually are going to contribute to the college campus community and are really going to offer more than just the GPAs and the scores. And so a lot of that conversation is speaking about what our alignment looks like and wanting to get into that in front of that entire audience to simply provide students with that opportunity. Ultimately, part of how we approach our eligibility requirements with Bottom Line to combat that is by kind of thinking about it as a college application process in its ideal and looking at students' eligibility requirements holistically. We take things such as nomination. There are requirements such as GPA, of course, and like financial guidelines, but things such as nominations from counselors, friends, different staff members are things to consider as well, and just looking at students beyond the numbers. And so ultimately, it's really combating those biases in those early stages before we even get in front of the students to talk about our college access or success program.
Thank you for that, Shane. I just want to lift up, I know that we're all in agreement that access in terms of opportunity granted has been an issue. Assumptions about who is ready and who is not ready by attire that they wear, the way that they speak, but then us being able to tap into seeing beyond the exterior and forcing people to put them in front of us and let us do the hard work, right? That they think is mission impossible, but we know it's mission critical. So thank you for raising that. Jonathan, since we have you here, can you just talk about your role as an advisor when it comes to the recruitment of students into programs?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here in community with you all today. As an advisor here, I would say that our job in the recruitment process is twofold, right? I would say first and foremost, it is to have our potential students have a sense of recognition as to what Bottom Line is about, what we are doing for them, what we can do for them. And then also being that initial one-on-one contact to then determine if they are, in fact, able to take full advantage of what we can offer for them as a program, whether they are joining our access side or our success side. So as Shane already mentioned, we have several determining factors that we are able to dig through and see if these students do in fact fit. First and foremost, determining whether or not they are in fact first generation or first in their family to attend college. We also are able to gauge their income levels to then see if they are within the income range of the students that we do want to ideally work with. And then also gauging their academic performance in high school, not so much to determine their outright success in college, although that is a factor of it, but also to determine just if they're going to be active with us, if they're going to be in communication with us and not just see us as like, okay, I'll talk to them when I can or when I will, but to have us be an active participant in their college journeys. So, there is wiggle room in every element of the determining process when it comes to recruitment in our section of it. So ultimately, the goal here is for us to see, are these students going to really be active participants in our program? Are they going to really take full advantage of the wealth of resources and supports that Bottom Line that we're eager to provide for them?
Thank you for that, Jonathan. And and we definitely, our belief is that they will, right? And we're going to do everything in our power to sort of make that come to a reality. So thank you for sharing that. Last thing on recruitment, Shane, if you could just, I know we talked about some recruitment efforts, but if you could just dive a little bit deeper into some changes you think we're making upon our recruitment strategy, and where do you see it working, and what may be some challenges to a strategy shift?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Michael started off with, I guess some point in July is my 1-year anniversary. And so going into our next recruitment cycle, lots of learnings and things that we're going to be looking to change and pivot. And so the first one that I'm thinking of doing is being more strategic around our expansion. Speaking back to, some additional context, it's 1-year anniversary in July, but I interned back in when I was an undergrad, probably in around 2015. And so from my recollection, Victoria, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Bronx was our second largest hub for like students from where students were applying and both applying and both becoming active students within our program. Seeing some thumbs up, so that sounds correct. For some additional context, our office is located in downtown Brooklyn. And so that is pretty central for some of our Brooklyn students, probably not the most accessible for Bronx students. And so since I've been back for this 1 year, that has not been the case, where it's just more of a challenge for students who want to travel upwards of an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half to our downtown location at any point, honestly. And so although we have pivoted to a hybrid model, which is more accommodating and more flexible, our geographic locations continues to be a challenge. And so I'll kind of start there. We're looking to start with Brooklyn as our main hub of where we're going to start recruiting students, and then expanding outwards to Manhattan, and then the outer boroughs of Bronx, Queens, and then Staten Island as well. In addition to that, we're happy to announce that we're also going to be partnering with Fifth Neighborhoods to go ahead and serve their population of different schools that they service within the Bronx. And we're also going to be offering that hub space for our other students who attend schools in the Bronx as well. And so that's going to expand our number of students that we're able to serve both in person and virtually by having a space for both our students in the Bronx and then our Brooklyn location as standard as well. And so the last thing that I'll probably say is that we're looking to start those relationships earlier. I mentioned that the recruitment process can feel a bit of a handoff in which I'm speaking to students for 30 minutes, and then advisors really take up that relationship, as Jonathan said, and making sure they fully understand what Bottom Line services offer, and then really ensuring that they feel comfortable and are working with our services, not only through their college application process, but through graduation as well. And so we want to be able to have deeper connections with our students. A student who applies to Bottom Line in February versus a student who applies in May has a very different conversation. Assuming that it's a 11th grade student, in February, I'm probably having a conversation of what is the college application process, creating a timeline, and really being sure that they understand what that application process looks like. Versus if it's May, students are likely a little more ready to have that conversation. They've already had those conversations with counselors, and they know what to expect for their senior year. Looking to start those relationships in February allows us to be more ingrained in those conversations, and really see Bottom Line as a part of that network, of that school, of that CBO. And so we want to be able to develop those relationships earlier within the school year so that there's more of a deepened connection all throughout the recruitment process.
Thank you for that. And we are excited for some of the new strategies, some of the expansion. We're definitely excited. Donald mentioned like just being a little bit more internal and diving deeper. So I think we're excited about some of the directions we're headed. But I know that there's a lot of people here. So definitely, if there are people out there who are interested in sort of pushing this conversation forward or having more dialogue, but how we can sort of go deeper, expand more. I mean, there's so much work to be done that we welcome the conversation. Jonathan, just coming back to you, can you share, with this expansion, we're moving into new areas. Students are going to have different challenges, based on life circumstances, based on school profile, so on and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about what you provide as an advisor to bottom line students in general, and specifically if you can talk about some examples of tailored supports for Black and Latinx young men that you've done either anecdotally or personal experience?
Absolutely. So in the chat, I'm going to type in the name of our holistic model that we use in order to serve our students. It is referred to as the DEAL model, right? So I'm going to break down exactly what this entails. So D stands for degree, right? So that, of course, we would serve in supporting our students with the academic aspect of the college experience. And that breaks down into anything from what classes should I choose because I am an evening person. I'd rather take my classes in the evening or in the mornings or in the weekends, or with a particular major that may only work for certain days of the week, to figuring out their career choices based on their major, and determining with the GPA what next steps can be taken. Thank you, Victoria, also for expanding that. And with employability, we then work with their career goals, right? Anything from interview prep to ensuring that their resume is in top shape, really, in order to work in the career field of their choosing, but also in having them be prepared for interviews, in feeling confident and knowing that they do in fact fit in the career of their choice in every which way. Which then, with all of that, also, we want to make sure that they are able to afford every aspect of the college experience, right? Which brings into light our affordability element, ensuring that their financial aid applications are up to date. If they are in fact taking out any loans, to ensure that those loan applications are in fact up to date. If there are any scholarship opportunities that can further expand and improve their college experience, that we make sure that they are kept totally in the loop of those scholarships to then be able to apply and ensure that, hey, some extra money would be nice, right? And in my view, what wraps everything around is our last element, which is the life element. As was mentioned earlier, especially by Donald, anything can happen, right, in terms of the college experience. So we want to make sure, as a success advisor and in bottom line, that our students always feel supported, that they always feel heard, that they always feel seen, and they know that there is someone rooting for them in their corner, that there's always someone who is going to work tirelessly to ensure that they can reach their vision of success as best as they can, however that they choose to define that, and as much as college can fit into that definition of success. That's how I like to view it. So in specifics to working with Black and Latinx men, two examples do come to mind. I primarily work with my alma mater, which is Hunter College. I work with students there, and I also have had a history of working with students in SUNY Plattsburgh as well. So I have had the opportunity of having one of my Plattsburgh students who was interested at the time in education, who's now looking to pursue the arts. And he was unsure, especially because he was in a school upstate, a PWI upstate, also to add, that he was looking for an opportunity to expand his interest in education. So I was able to connect him to New York City Men Teach, a program in the city that was able to specifically work with men to really pique their curiosity when it comes to education and becoming teachers. So he had a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful experience there with NYC Men Teach, and he has networks there that he keeps in touch with to this day. So it was a really, really productive opportunity for him. And one of my Hunter students, who I've kept in touch with since he's graduated, he has had ample connections and even internships through the pandemic that he was able to be a part of, thanks to his partnership with the CUNY Black Male Initiative. That he has really, really enjoyed. He's really credited that program with instilling in him a sense of community support and confidence that, quite frankly, he was struggling to get as quite simply just a Hunter student. So being able to acquire that additional sense of community and that additional sense of support through Black Male Initiative was tantamount to truly creating a more positive experience for him, a more successful experience, and more importantly, one where he felt, yes, I can succeed here and I can thrive in a college environment. And those are just two examples where, you know, it was just a matter of making it clear for students that there are vast amounts of resources out there and additional opportunities beyond just being college students, where you can truly explore your interests and see exactly what works best for you as a college student, especially for our males. So it's really a matter of expansion. It's really a matter of making it clear what's out there and being that level of support that is frequent and consistent. So I would feel that would be a breakdown of just a bit of what I do.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jonathan. I do want to lift up, just for the audience, two things you said. One, sort of ideological, and one just really practical. I definitely want to lift up have them being seen. I think that is a woven thread through, I think, what all of us are saying. And I think that us seeing them, not only is a reflection, of our own past, but for those of us who also happen to be fathers, right, of young men of color, like also what we see for them in the future. So I just want to just lift up this idea of them being seen. But there's something practical that I also wanted to sort of highlight that you said that people may not recognize, that a lot of the data will say that Black and Latinx young men get steered in certain directions from majors, right? So we have this whole big push for STEM nowadays, and so the sciences and the engineering, but the data would show that Black and Latinx men are less likely to have a major in one of those or to graduate a degree in any one of those fields. So I just also want to lift up the support just as an advisor to help figure out how they get into these spaces and pockets that people don't necessarily identify for them. So I just wanted to highlight that a little bit. Donald, this is like the money question that I'm going to ask you, not the literal money question, but I do think that you have so much experience and so much expertise that I want to just link it also to sort of what's happening nationally. So one of my questions is, why do you think that it's even critical now, the opportunity for Black Latinx young men to enroll and persist? And if it's any way that you can sort of ground that potentially in like what's happening now with affirmative action, because it's now it's sort of added a little bit more nuance to the game right now, right? So if you just talk about it from your perspective and your vision, why you think this opportunity is important to enroll and persist, and how that's directly impacted by sort of how things are moving now in this country with affirmative action is just one example of an increased barrier for them.
Wow, so that's loaded. First of all, the work just got harder, right? The pool was once, a really deep pool. Now we're talking about splashing around in a baby pool, backyard blow-up pool, when it comes to talent of young men of color actually enrolling in college. We kind of take a look at it from like New York City alone. New York City Public School has probably lost close to 300,000 students since 2019, right? All of those students have not relocated. They all have not enrolled in private schools or Catholic schools, and not all being homeschooled. I think we're probably going to be seeing an insane increase in the high school dropout rate. And so that's also narrowing the pool. And so when we have a conversation about persistence, I think we have to have a conversation about, we have to change the conversation with young people around success. See, success is not a singular path. And I think that's where we go wrong, right? Success is different for every single individual. What we have to get at with young people is their why. And once we understand their why, we can help them backward map that to their educational pathway. One of the things that always comes back to me, one of our funders, the Tiger Foundation, introduced us to the Marcy Lab School. And I'll never forget something that this young lady said to us as I was sharing with her our Eagle Soaring Beyond initiative and how we're trying to create pathways for all students. She said, and it was a rhetorical question, she said, if education is so valued in our society, why is only one form of it respected, right? And that resonated with me. And so when we get to the question of persistence, I think, one, it's about having students connect with their why to help them put their educational journey and that investment in perspective. First and foremost, young people are now making very different decisions, right? Like even across our network, we're seeing 20 to 25% of our guys opting to enter the workforce. So when we talk about persistence, we have to have the conversation around making college make sense. And see, the thing is, I think we're still in a space where young people are going to college thinking that the degree is going to guarantee them a job. What we have to do is actually break down how they need to leverage that experience. At Eagle, we used to always tell our young men, hey, listen, as soon as you get on campus, connect with financial aid so that you can make sure that your money is always right throughout your journey. Connect with career services. You can get that internship every summer and that entry-level job. Connect with career services so you can get the academic support and social emotional support. The newest thing that we're telling our young people is to connect with alumni affairs, right? Your goal should be to connect with 5 to 10 alumni in a career pathway that you're looking to go into so you can start to build that ecosystem. The mentorship, the resources, the connections, the lived experience of those individuals will far exceed anything that you will learn in the classroom. What we have to think about when we talk about persistence and the importance of that is the building of the ecosystem. So while we have to have a different conversation with our young people around what success is and making it make sense for them, right? We also have to have a different conversation with higher ed. To be quite honest, they have all of the pieces in place to crack the code on persistence, but all of the departments are so siloed. Right? So how do we really bridge that gap and engage in a different conversation with higher ed? We just established, we're going into our 3rd year of a partnership with Mary Baldwin University. And, we came to some community agreements. So they offered 3 full rides for a group of our guys. For additional 8 students, it was an 80% full ride. But along that conversation, we were like, listen, we need to make sure that these kids actually have a paid internship every single summer. We want to shift the conversation of going to college from crippling debt to a future activated, right? And that's when you really get to persistence. So it's really around the wraparound services, not just what Bottom Line can do, but then also we're not leveraging the young people themselves as the greatest resource. They listen to each other more than the adults in their lives, right? So how are we leveraging them as a community? And when I think about this, right, in our space as CBOs, now that we know better, right, we have to do better. While we're all focused on the individual success organizationally, I have to tell you, for me, that means nothing if we're not working together to create the ecosystem to change the conditions and disrupt what we know is normal, right? And in that means bottom line, SEO, like for Eagle, we did a forensic audit of all of our partners. And we looked at this long term. Bottom line, #1 draft pick. SEO, #1 draft pick, right? Fordham Step, because they transitioned from their 6th through 12th, 7th through 12th grade program into a C-Step program. Summer Search, we know they support their kids into 10th grade. We did that because we were looking at the long-term success of our students. But if we came together as CBOs, these young people are coming from the same communities, right? A lot of them are going to the same schools. If we start to connect in a more intentional way, we can create belonging before they even step foot on the campus. So I think when we talk about persistence, we have to take a step back and look at this more broadly. We are greater than the sum of our parts in our individual work. And I truly believe that creating the ecosystem for the students' long-term success is essential, is a necessity. And this is how we make college make sense for young people, where they're looking at that sticker price and they're like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that, right? And for us at Eagle, we started to take a look at this data and we're like, oh my God, some of these young men are ended up being poorer than when we met them. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. So it's about college persistence, but also we have to push the envelope and write the book on how to go to college differently. How do we learn and earn? What are those industries that provide tuition reimbursement, that provide tuition forgiveness? So a young person is not making the decision to work versus being educated. They can do both, right? Success is not a singular path, right? And we have to stop that language, and we have to start helping young people really connect with their why so that we can help this thing make sense for them, right? So, you know, we're partnering with BMCC right now, right? They have a partnership with Morehouse College. A lot of our guys want to go to HBCUs. With BMCC, if you have a 2.8, you get a guaranteed admission to Morehouse College, right? Now that young person can get that degree for half price. They have a partnership with the Aspen Institute that's helping students that have attained their associate's degree get scholarship money to get their bachelor's degree. I'll never forget going on a visit to Kingsborough Community College. Michael Rodriguez, my good friend, took me on a tour, and he asked me what percentage of the population at Kingsborough Community College that I thought was of students of color. And I'm like, oh, 80%. It was at like 50. And I was shocked. And he said, hey, saw those $1 million homes that you drove past on your way to Kingsborough Community College? Well, those families are sending their kids here, and then they're transferring to the Columbia Universities, the NYUs. It's not where you start, it's where you finish, right? And it's about having a dialogue with students, with families that are clout chasing in terms of names of universities. There's smarter ways to go about this, right? But I think collectively, if we all come together, there is a power that we have, and we can start to really push the envelope with our partners in higher ed who need us, right, as a feeder system, right? And we can demand more of them to being what they need to be for our young people. So while persistence is critically important, and we need that because so many young people end up not graduating with crippling debt and then now find themselves in a purgatory of not being able to go anywhere because they owe money on their term bill, right? We have to figure out how we make it make sense, but then also the money issue, right? We have to figure out how more students are getting support from a financial standpoint, right? I think I've read this report with the United Negro College Fund where their graduation rate based on students who are getting scholarships is like 70% because it comes down to money. This year, as the Eagle Academy Foundation, through the generous support of some of our donors, we were able to give out $90,000 in scholarships for our students who are enrolled in college. And let me tell you, for at least about 15 of them, it made the difference of them actually re-enrolling for their senior year to graduate. Imagine $1,500, right, separating you from being able to walk across the stage. It's insane, but no one actually talks about the money, right, as well. Most scholarships are given on the front end, right? But throughout that journey, students continue to need that support. And yeah, so listen, I could go on and on and on, but I truly believe that the persistence question is one of creating the right ecosystems, right? And now that we know better, we have to figure out how we really build that out for the collective success of all young people.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Donald. Important words, jewels, in the light of the 50th anniversary of hip hop, you dropped some gems on them. So definitely thank you for that. But just some key things that I just want to highlight just to the audience about the ecosystem. Like, we are all in this ecosystem, right? So what is our intentional role that we're playing? So thank you for lifting up the fact that like we have to do this together. But it has to be some intentionality that we're moving in the same direction, that one's not trying to pull while the other's trying to push, so lift that up. And I think we should coin the make it make sense, because to your point, they want to make it make sense, CENTS, and we're trying to make it make sense, SENSC. And if people don't know, just in terms of numbers, that a lot of the degree attainment that happens for Black and brown people are from for-profit colleges. And the logic that you spoke, very eloquently about is that they think that the end game is some money, right? So they think they pay more money to get more money. So we have to make it make sense in their why, in their trajectory, and there's the ability to be self-sufficient post-graduation, because we haven't even touched about generational change and generational wealth. Like, we're just even trying to figure out how we break the barriers of them being able to take care of themselves independently. So I definitely applaud everything that you said, and thank you for bringing that into this space. Last thing, how are we doing on time?
We have a couple minutes left, so I think we might actually go towards wrapping it up and taking a question from the audience.
Yes, so let me do this. Let me first just by thanking you guys for all the thoughtful responses. I don't know, if we have questions in the chat? I definitely want to give, like I promised people, that there'd be opportunities to ask questions from the audience. I know we don't have much time left, so early thanks for the responses, the thoughtful responses, the intentional responses from the panelists. But I do want to take a second to see if there are any questions from the audience. And I know Rimsha Ganacho, just shout out to her, who's manning the Zoom chat right now. So thank you for that. Do we have any questions that sort of seem to be very resonating with sort of the conversation that we're having right now?
We actually got a raised hand, so I'll go to whoever I saw first as the question. So Antonio Aponte, if I'm pronouncing that correct, please feel free to ask the question.
Yeah, Antonio Aponte. Thank you very much. This is a great dialogue, great information. Obviously, some great experts on the panelists with my good friend, Mr. Ruff. Just wanted to add a comment. I've been doing this work for like 30 plus years. I work for the Boys Club of New York, and I'm also the founder of the Latino College Expo, which is the oldest college fair in the city, started back in 1990. Seen a lot during my recruitment days as a college recruiter. So we failed to talk about families. And while we're recruiting students, we're recruiting the family. And if you can, and more initiatives, I'd love to hear more initiatives. I have some thoughts, about recruiting families, because if you have to have the family buy-in in order to make our work a lot easier. And especially with our Latino families who have that language barrier, and some of our other international families, with everything happening with affirmative action, everything happening with our immigrant population that's increasing, that's another pool that we have to address. We can't forget about that pool. They are coming into the city and they are going into our school system, and they're going unprepared. And I don't know how supported they really are, but we have to, make sense of that. And then a comment towards Mr. Ruff mentioned about affirmative action. Everyone's fearful of it. It's happened. I mean, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. Now we know that. How do we work to circumvent that? And I really think that students need to really embrace their story, because I know behind closed doors in admissions, they read, they try to do as much work behind the closed doors. And the more they can understand and the students embrace their story, the more they can stand out in the crowd. And it's always about finding the right fit, whether it's UPenn, whether it's BMCC, it's the fit that best suits that student where they are, and that will promote greater success. But I enjoy all the work and all the positive energy that's being expressed today, and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Definitely the families, that I'm glad that you brought that into this space. And it's a collective wisdom, right? Because it's helping the families be on board with this process, right? Because we also know another barrier is the responsibilities that young people feel for their families, right? So it has to be a collective conversation if we want to move the needle. So definitely thank you for lifting that into this space. Rimsha, do we have another? It's your call.
We do, but we're at 57. So if people want to drop in the questions in the chat, we can make sure to continue the conversation. Like, this isn't the end, this is a continuation, and this is just the beginning of the work that we're doing. So please drop your questions in the chat, but I think we're going to turn to a close now.
Awesome. Well, then let me take this second to just again thank people for their time, for the questions that they haven't asked, but the spirit and the energy. Shane, thank you so much for everything that you brought around recruitment and our strategies. Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing so much more about what it means to be an advisor and how we're being intentional in our impact of students as they're trying to persist. And Donald, just thank you so much for bringing the wisdom, the expertise of like connecting it all together, of course, holding some accountability for us as CBOs and higher education in the role that we play. And definitely thank you for the work that you're doing. And we're looking forward to the work that we collectively with you can be doing. So I'm excited for that journey. In all the spaces that we have, it's important that we just don't talk, but that there are some tangible things. So one of the things that we're asking people is, if you know a young person that you think might be good for Bottom Line, that you think might need that support, that might need that access, might need that push, might need that one-on-one critical conversation. We do have the QR code. I know they're probably putting things in the chat. Definitely refer. If you want to connect, if you're a high school, a CBO or college, and you want to connect about how we sort of talk more about Bottom Line and how we work. On the high school side, definitely reach out to Shane Joseph. If you're a college and you're figuring out like, how can we dive deeper, definitely send me an email and we can talk more. If you want to stay engaged, subscribe to our listserv, join Bottom Line Connect, follow us on social media. Hopefully you guys will continue to push us to create more spaces like that for the community. I know that Donald and I, we collectively early had a conversation. He talked about his town halls that they opened up to the community. I think these dialogues are important, particularly if it's going to spark action. So if you guys really want us to be conduits and drivers of these conversations, we're more than happy to be. But we want to know that like people are engaged and want to be engaged in that. So please let us know your thoughts. So again, thank you guys so much for the time, for the energy. Again, to the panelists, the audience members, thank you guys for being here. Bottom Line staff who are help support behind the scenes, thank you. And I wish everybody a productive and wonderful day. And we look forward to engaging you again. Take care.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.